Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Dewell. I am your host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. I'm excited about our discussion today, and I can't wait to tell you why. First and foremost is because as I prepare, which I do with every single show that we have, I personally came up with 3 facets of the answer to the conversation. And today, we're talking about the most important business investment. So for me personally, we have people, action, and time to think. And I asked the panelists today to decide just one. For them, what is the one thing that matters most to them and what they see for business owners today? Because the view I use makes them equally important, it was hard, but I did it. The thing is, it's difficult to have so many daily tasks and monthly responsibilities that putting the focus on the right action at the right time, like right now, is the key. In just moments, you're going to meet the panel to find out what they think is the most important business investment right now. And before we go to our quick open, I wanted to bring up the book Good to Great. As I was talking about preparing for the show, there's this quote that stood out to me on page 51. The company Nucor, they said, Nucor rejected the old adage that people are your most important asset. In a good to great transformation, people are not your most important asset. The right people are. And I thought that was really interesting and very important on a lot of levels. And so we'll see where the conversation goes. This may turn out to be totally useless. This may turn out to be the topic of a conversation. We don't know until we meet our panelists, Dewell and Carmen, right after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
Okay, we can't even do anything except for to just jump right in here. Dewell, Dawson, how are you today?
I am awesome. Welcome.
And okay, everybody, for those of you who know me drinking tea, Dewell has a surprise. He is trying to rival the size of my teacup with his own.
It's all about the size, baby. All
about the size. That's right. Oh. And also with us today is Carmen Rojas. Carmen, how are you doing today?
I am doing absolutely splendid. I can't be doing much better.
And everybody who's listening, she's got rain in her neck of the woods. I don't know when the last time I actually saw rain in Boulder was, and I was actually missing it the other day. So Carmen, I'm super excited that you have a little bit of rain there. I'm going to live vicariously through you.
Well, I'm in Florida, so you can have all the rain you want. I'll send it your way.
Send it my way. Right on. I love it.
I'm going to echo those same sentiments. I'm here in South Louisiana. Jessica, you can have all the rain.
Yeah.
You can have mine too. I've had enough.
Yeah, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
Well, now, okay, so as we change seasons, is there a season where there is no moisture and no rain and no wet?
Not really in Florida. It could rain just about any day, any time of the year. I mean, it gets worse if you're like in South Florida. I'm in North Florida, and it does kind of dry out a bit in the wintertime. But even then, I mean, it if the wind blows the right way, it rains. And that's really about it.
Pretty much the same here. It's just hot and rainy. And then sometimes it's hot and rainy. And a lot of times people think, well, you live in South Louisiana, the rain ought to cool things off. No, it doesn't. It turns it into a sauna. I was in Boston, and it was fall, and I was just so amazed at all of the different colors, and the cool weather. In South Louisiana, everything is just brown.
So what I heard from both of you was that there's really not a true season of change for the weather. And that makes me wonder, I'm going to so delicately bring this back to business. And so I'm wondering if there's a season for business. And when we're talking about the most important asset, is there, I'm curious from each of you guys, what is the most important investment a business can consider and needs to consider right now?
In my line of business, and I'm in marketing, I do digital marketing, and we deal a lot with businesses at different stages, but I would say probably half the business that we do is with or businesses in the early stages of their development. So speaking from that perspective, I think one of the most important things that a business can do, and the most important investment, whether that be time, money, resources, whatever, however you want to term investment, is to have something that's testable. Have something that, whether, when it comes to marketing or your website or your logo or your brand or whatever, when you get started, invest in making sure that you can actually test this thing out. Give yourself enough room to make mistakes, because very few, even the most ginormous of brands, when we talk about Google, they got it wrong the first time. Google wasn't always Google. So you've got to give yourself the space to make a mistake and come back and fix it, and give yourself the setup to be able to recognize when you are making a mistake, so that you can actually go back and fix it with some resources and data and intelligence to actually move in the right way. So again, whether that be hiring the right website designer or, investing in some analytics for your digital marketing, or however you want to do that and spend the time, in my opinion, that's the most important investment that a business can make.
Testability. Got it. Okay. All right, Joel, what do you think?
My background is in sales, and I've worked for a lot of different companies. So let's just say we're going to take a look at this from a corporate level. We're in Q4 right now. Everything that she just mentioned has already, let's just say that's already happened. We've already made a lot of mistakes. So the one thing that a lot of corporations want to do in Q4 is they want to finish strong. A lot of times what they'll do, they'll focus on whatever their strengths is, because we have to have a good year. This is when we try to fix all of the mistakes that we've already made. Let's just say we didn't hire the right person or whatever, but at all costs, we always want to finish strong in the last quarter of the year. That's number one. The second thing is we have to show some type of employee appreciation for all of the hard work that was done in the first 3 quarters. So that's why you'll always see a lot of conferences, you see a lot of Christmas parties. There's always this really, really big push at the end of the year. And we're talking about immediate right now. There's always this big push from now going forward for a company to really, really, just really knock it out of the park. It's not like this is your one-time chance, but this is where everybody comes together and say, hey, we have to do what it takes because we have to finish strong. That's it.
I love it. Okay, so Joelle, you picked 2 things. You were like me.
Well, they're very important.
Well, they are. And I would say, as is the testability, that Carmen found and lumped 3 things under testability, maybe even 5 or 6. So you guys are pretty sneaky that way. And everybody who's listening, I really want to make an important point. It is in how we prepare what we say. It is in exactly the words that we use when we say it. And it also comes down to how are we able to model what we do. And with that in mind, I want to hear from you guys when we're talking about testing, when we're talking about fixing our mistakes. That was a common answer between both Carmen and Joelle, to finish strong and to test. Let's talk about that for just a minute. And in those, what is the setup to understand what mistakes we've made that we need to fix by the end of the year? And this is an open question for all of us. It's now kind of turning into a dialogue, I think, and I'll just be a lot of question answering, asking too.
Got it.
I think, and I love the opportunity to talk with salespeople, so this is really kind of cool. But one of the things that I see that businesses that are really successful are doing is that they're picking down the silos between sales and marketing. Some places you've got sales that's mad at marketing and marketing that's mad at sales and all of that nonsense. But particularly when you're doing analytics and you're testing, having a good relationship between sales and marketing so that you guys can share information freely without holding back anything for fear of cutting budgets or, any kind of reprisals, that makes sales better and that makes marketing better. And giving sales opportunities to use what they've learned or what you've learned through analytics, let them do some testing too. So if you found out that your, online customers are responding more when you have a value proposition that says this thing, let sales try that and see if that's working for them too. And you will learn so much more, but you have to have that open relationship between sales and marketing in order for that to really come to fruition well.
I'm so glad you said that, because for the past, I would say 20 to 25 years, if you look at the sales cycle, it's been more like a relationship between Ike and Tina Turner. And the reason I say that is because there's always, there's always this frustration, this tension. They're not doing this. They're supposed to be doing this, and all of this type of stuff. Whereas over the last, say, 5 to 10 years, where they finally started getting along, to where, now the dialogue has started between the sales department and the marketing department, and it's become very seamless. So now everybody's on the same page. And when that happens, not only do you get rid of the tension that they've had, but now the process is a lot more enjoyable, number one, for all of them. And number two, it's more profitable because the fact that they're working together and they're all on the same page. So that's a big, big plus for any corporation. So for anybody out there, if your marketing department and your sales department are putting on the gloves like Mike Tyson and Buster Douglas, call stop. Call stop.
Okay, and that's really interesting. We're talking about the continual change of silos, which, by the way, I have seen in his companies as little as one having their own struggle with their own sales hat and their own marketing hat, all the way up into companies above 500 people where you have teams and departments, and there's some challenges of the way things have always been done versus the way things are changing, and how do you best use all of the information that's out there. So I have a question for you guys. So let's say we've got a senior marketing person and a senior sales person, and they both happen to be listening to this conversation. And by the way, if you're either one and your counterpart is not listening, this would be a great episode to share because of where we're going next. And that is, when we're talking about metrics and we're talking about testability and we're talking about how do we report things, let's start there. I want to start, what are the things that can cross over between sales and marketing that are metrics that a company may be using and may be misreading, as well as maybe missing and would benefit from adding?
I would say that's going to differ between companies. Depending on kind of what sector you're in, are you a B2B, are you a B2C, kind of those questions will make what specific metric you use be different. But what's important is that sales and marketing and, whatever the C-level setup is, that everybody be on the same page about what that metric is. It's not, it's not quite as important which metric. Well, let me back up. It is important which metric, but what's of greater importance is that everybody be on the same page about what metrics it is we're going to watch and why.
That's actually something that I talk about too. There are specific industry metrics. There are specific business-oriented metrics. And what it does come down to is, what is the goal and what is the objective and how has it been communicated and what has everybody agreed on? Because within that, there are metrics that are no use and just a waste of time to collect. And then there are metrics that nobody thinks about collecting that actually make the most sense to see if we're on track or the company is on track to hitting its milestones and its end goals. I like that. Okay.
Now, here we go. I'm going to step in the ring for all of the salespeople and sales managers across the world. Here we go. The one common metric that the marketing department and the sales department have, or what's called leads. Okay. The marketing and sales is not the same thing. It's not. For some reason, it keeps getting lumped together, but it's totally different. Marketing is the process of bringing in those potential clients or potential leads, let's just say. The sales job is to take these leads and turn them into sales. So the one common metric that they both have is the leads. Where's the friction? Sometimes the marketing department, because of compliance, their hands are tied, and there's certain things that they have to do to market to the public to get these leads in. Salespeople, on the other hand, sometimes their hands are not tied, which means that this lead may not be what we consider a qualified lead. Okay, this we can tell just by looking at it or talking to a company or that person, whether it's B2B or B2C, that this is not a right fit. However, at the end result, when it comes to marketing, that's what their job is, to bring leads. On the sales end, that's how they make their money. And there's a what's called a closing ratio. How many leads you got versus how many you turn into customers. Well, the salespeople say, well, that was junk anyway, but that still goes, towards their production, and it goes toward the evaluation at the end of the year. But to go back to what we were saying earlier, now the departments are working together to say, well, okay, well, in South Louisiana, instead of sitting down and having tea, we'll go out and have a beer or a shot of tequila or something like that, where we talk about this and say, okay, what do you consider a qualified lead? What do we need to get more of? Mm-hmm. And they're sitting down and they're working together to say, okay, well, we need to change this or we need to change that to give you guys, the salespeople, more of an opportunity to convert more into sales.
And there's another piece I'm going to add on to that in just a second. You're talking about shared meaning. You're talking about a shared consciousness. You're talking about this time and this place and this energy where what's being said needs to match up with what can be offered, and what's being sold, if you will, is actually in line with what is. And now we're going to add complexity, because we're talking about research and development. We're talking about product management. We're talking about, can we deliver the experience that was communicated, then sold and promised to the actual product? So that's really interesting. And so there was something that you said at the end about, well, no, it wasn't about the go have a beer or the tequila. It was after that, but it caught my eye. It caught my ear. It's always good to have a drink with friends. And that's, here it is. Okay, and that is, when we're talking about the concept of shared meaning, what salespeople hear qualified and unqualified clients, leads, looking for, needs to be communicated back. And there's a loop that goes back to marketing, because it will help marketing better qualify those leads coming in, tell a better story, make a better brand connection with the right people that are having the problem that needs to be solved.
That's it. Now, and the funny thing is, it doesn't just stop right there. It can be just something as simple as the image. The first business that I had was insurance. Mm-hmm. I got all these nice brochures. Okay, I worked in the senior market. So I got all of these brochures of all of these senior citizens smiling. They're on the beach. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting in a house, and the majority of my clients were either in wheelchairs, they were in the bed, they were hooked to oxygen tanks. And just because you buy my product, that doesn't mean you're going to be able to go out on the beach.
Right.
And sometimes in the feedback that I get, it's like, well, this is not for me, or this is not talking to me, where it has to be relatable. It really has to be relatable. And a lot of times, it's like it doesn't fit me. This is not for me. It does, but you want to be relatable to that end user, whether it's B2B or B2C.
Mm-hmm. And I know Carmen is waiting to get her 2 cents in here. We've been talking about some shared meaning and feedback loops and things like that, being relatable. All right, Carmen, go for it.
Don't turn me loose, because it could be a long show. But no, I think one thing that often challenges, marketing departments, and particularly when we're talking about, shared meeting and all of that, is the difference between, we're talking about conversions at the end of the day. To use the analytical metric, it's conversions. But the question often becomes, is it quality or quantity? Because what'll happen, and I've seen it happen to marketing departments, from large businesses, small businesses, whatever. Salespeople say, hey, I need more leads. Marketing person interprets that as, I need a larger number of leads. So the friction comes down on the website. We do these pictures, you know, you end up kind of going more the direction of like a shotgun blast type of a thing. And then you get more leads. And then the salesperson comes back a month later and says, yeah, but all those leads suck. And it's like, okay, well, do you want quality or do you want quantity of leads? You know, which is it that you're going to do? And that then becomes a matter of how are people incentivized and, you know, all of that. And that often can be a sticking point and needs to come from leadership, that they're understanding what it is that we're actually looking for. Because I can flood you with 1,000 leads a day, and if 2 of them work out, well, that was a complete waste of time. Right. Or I could give you 5 leads and get 3 of them to come out.
Right.
Which would you rather have?
Exactly. Well, I would rather have the second scenario. It would be better if it was 4 out of 5, but I'd take the second scenario. I'll be honest, Carmen. And, you know, that's actually where, and this is where my specialty happens to be, is in the soft skills and the doing what you say you're going to do side of things, and the unwritten agreements that get formed. And what I hear both of you guys talking about, and it just solidified in my brain after listening to you, Carmen, with the quality and the quantity, is that we might have a set of values and we may have some processes that give us this this way to do business, the rules of engagement for our sales and marketing teams. And at the same point in time, what ends up happening is, but we're incentivized by something totally different. And now we have this great chasm between what we say we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And we really believe we're living that, yet how we're paid doesn't align with that. And I actually think that's a pretty big place. And if we're talking about, you know, being able to iterate mistakes, identify mistakes and change them, we're talking about finishing strong and showing appreciation, like Dewell was talking about at the very beginning. It's up to the leadership, the leaders that are in those positions, to find out, do we have gaps between what we say we're going to do and how we want to present ourselves to the business, and what's actually happening and what we're modeling for ourselves, for our teams, for our departments, for our employees at every level.
Got it. You hit the nail right on the head. Knocked it out the park.
That's awesome. Okay, so I want to move into then, we're talking about metrics. We're talking about the shared meaning and the conversion and what all of that, what that the leads are, what we have in common. So when we talk about finishing strong, I'm curious, Carmen and Dewell, what does finishing strong look like and feel like?
As I said, everybody wants to finish strong. January, February, all the way down to October, you have up months, you have down months. But in a lot of industries, the Q4 is the big push. Whether it's the healthcare industry, they have what's called AEP, which is the open enrollment for Medicare. You have car dealers that, hey, we're going to close out. We're going to try to give these things away. They want to, you know, turn over their inventory. A lot of industries are focused on making a really, really big push at the end of the year, because if they do, then that'll compensate for a lot of the trial and error, or a lot of the challenges that they had at the beginning of the year. And it can be done. And let's just use the car industry, for example. When I was selling cars, you got a sales manager, okay? He sits up in his office sipping coffee, and you know, he's just kind of sitting back. In Q4, he's out there on the floor with everybody else. Everybody's out there they're trying the best they can, because everybody wants to finish really strong, because number 2, Christmas is coming. You want to have a nice check. Okay. Everybody does. I mean, that's where that money comes from, because, you know, you have kids, you want to finish the year on a good note. You always want to, I don't care what industry it is, what type of business that you have, you always want to end the year on a strong and positive note. Now, when it comes to, did you want me to go to the second one?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. There's 4 ways that you motivate people. Okay. Now, people go to work, they come home, they're tired, especially in sales and a lot of other industries as well. As a leader, you have to learn how to motivate your people if you want them giving you peak performance. It can't just be the paycheck. One of the ways that people are motivated is through money. Mm-hmm. That's why people give out Christmas bonuses. Our companies give out Christmas bonuses. Public recognition. That's why they have award ceremonies. Public praise. Hey, Jessica, you did a great job today. Keep up the good work. Little things like that make a big difference. Number 4 is more job responsibility, maybe a promotion, giving them the opportunity to showcase their talents. At the end of the year, as you see, that's where, the Christmas parties, the award. That's why, if they're going to be pushing really, really hard in Q4, you want to reward them some type of way. So what most companies do, they'll do all 4. They'll do all of them that way, because it's different for everybody. It's different for Carmen, maybe different for me, maybe different from you. However, if you just focus as a company and as a leadership team and say, hey, we're going to do something to recognize our employees. Okay, that makes them want to really push in Q4. Number 1, they end the year on a positive note. So when January comes, they're ready to do the whole process all over again.
So all I heard was there's a secret sauce of these 4 things, and it's a Louisiana home-cooked recipe.
Yes.
And if I were to put that into words that actually make sense for the Voice of Bold Business Radio, it would be there are 4 ways to mix and match depending on each organization and their goals. And we're talking specifically about finishing strong at the end of the year. And what I think I could extrapolate and say with ultimate confidence is this can happen on a weekly, a monthly, and a quarterly basis, which also keeps that motivation occurring, and we end up with a less cyclical business when it comes to new clients or new sales or moving of inventory or whatever that metric is. That if we can come up with what that secret sauce is for us, we go from highs and lows, seasonality, and we might be able to avoid some of it. Now, some industries really just are seasonal, and it is what it is. But there are ways to even it out over time and know what to expect. And I think that motivation plays a big part in that. So finishing strong all the time. And what came up for me when you were saying that was, and whatever the end of the year stuff is that happens, they should be recognized in March. Because nothing is happening in January and February, and March is the beginning of the spring. And what a perfect way to continue the conversation and reiterate what was, model what that is in a time. Mm-hmm. And I randomly picked March. Maybe it's different for another business or industry, but being able to recognize, don't forget, these are what we want you to model. This is what we're going for. And we're saying by recognizing this fits back into our vision, mission, and values to solve a problem and get a solution to our customers.
Right. Now, let me go ahead and piggyback off of that, because Carmen, her background is marketing. My background is in sales. So I don't want this to be just about sales and marketing. If you have a leadership team, okay, let's go traditional 9-to-5 job.
Sure.
Whether you're a project manager or whatever, it's very important for you to know how to motivate your team. And this is on a daily basis, because this is how you guarantee that you will always get peak performance from them, knowing what motivates them. Is it that pat on the back? Is it that, hey, man, let's go out to lunch, you did a great job, whatever it is? Because we're just like kids. Why do you think they give you lollipops and suckers and stickers? Why? Because that's so right. Am I right?
Well, you're absolutely right. That's exactly right. Yep.
That's why they do that. Well, just because we grow up, that doesn't mean that we don't want the lollipop, the stickers, and all that kind of stuff. It just changes. But the underlying premise of that is still the same. You're motivating them, because if you do that, then they're going to become responsive to you. However, if there's something that happens that that didn't agree with the policy, or something that you need to correct, let's put it that way, it's easier for you to correct it right then and there, because they know that they want that acceptance. They want that little candy bar. They want that go out on Taco Tuesday. Mm-hmm. So if for some reason you have to address a certain issue, it's a lot easier, and you'll get a better response if they know that you're going to, whatever that little dangling carrot is for them, if they know that's at the end of the week or at the end of the rainbow, then whatever it is that you need them to change, as long as you address it immediately, that makes your job as a leader a lot better and a lot easier.
That reminds me of a story, and I'm telling half the story because the message is very clear. The part that I cannot remember is the city or the company. So if this is your company, speak up. It's really awesome. There's a company, and they're more in the manufacturing world, where they were looking for ways to support and engage employees. And they were like, you know what if we had Pizza Friday? But this isn't Pizza Friday where everybody eats pizza at work. This is Pizza Friday where the company bought pizza and had it delivered to the doorstep for the families of the employees every Friday. So the person who was working, the man, the woman, the mom, the dad, the daughter, or the son that was bringing in income into the house gets to be seen, publicly praised, and being seen as a hero for getting pizza on Friday for their family. Talk about, and as far as an investment goes, the what were the things that they said? Error went down, accidents went down, contentment, overall satisfaction went up. So it's going to be something very small that could actually yield the biggest results. And that's where, as a leader in the organization, and going, Joel, what you were saying about the motivation piece, and that the people are motivated differently, but the culture of the organization can make that a little bit easier. So you're not doing 7,000 different things for 7,000 different people. We've got common values to work from.
Yeah.
We can go from there. All right, Carmen, what I heard you start to speak up, and I want to make sure that you get your 2 cents in before I pivot a little.
Marketing is a little bit kind of a different beast, because in the fourth quarter we're already projecting into the next year.
Yeah,
marketing,
exactly.
I like to look at it as we're loading the weapon for sales to go out and fire. So if we're still loading in fourth quarter, we're way behind. We're way behind.
Right.
So, we are, in terms of what are we doing, and that's just an important concept for sales leadership to kind of to be on the same page with about as well. That, the conversation about how am I going to finish the fourth quarter strong needs to happen with marketing like in June.
Nice.
That's when you start having that conversation. Don't come to marketing in August, not August, but October,
yeah.
and say my numbers are down. I got to finish strong. What can you do to help me? Because at that point, it's just too much to try and change and ramp up. If you want to ramp up, plan your ramp up in June, not October.
Now there's this thing, and I'm going to jump in here. Hold that thought. We're into the last 100 days of the year. Small companies that can do things a little quicker, or actually, and I'm even going to take it one step further and say it doesn't matter the size of the company. A leader, a person who is striving to become a leader, anybody practicing leadership skills, the last 100 days really matters, because there's a lot that can occur on a personal level or on a small team level in that last 100 days. And Carmen, you're absolutely right, though, is part of scaling is thinking ahead. Part of scaling is we can still fly by the seat of our pants, but we have to at least know which direction we're flying along the way.
It's not so bad when you're going to say, hey, can you print an extra 200 of these, or can we run an extra ad in a paper or post an extra billboard on a website? That's fine. But when you come in and say we have to change something, now we want to do a completely different spread, and we want to do, then that's when marketing people start to get gray hairs like I have. That's when you start getting the side eye from the graphic artist, because we're starting to change things. And I was going to say, one of the fun things about being a marketing person, and I think I've done this in I don't know, probably every corporate job I've ever had, is the marketing team gets to do the end of the year video for the Christmas party or whatever. And that's always a blast. So, marketing people, that's your fourth quarter task, is to put together one heck of a good end of the year video. Along with, getting ready for the next year. That's always something that takes the time to do that. You'll want to start looking at, and sometimes that's hard. And then that's when you're going to get the sales marketing person that comes to the marketing director that comes to the sales director and says, okay, how were our sales this year? Because that's what they'll use to evaluate how effective the marketing was. And the sales director says, but the year's not over yet. My biggest push is coming, for, these last 100 days, and the marketing person says, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do for the next year if you're telling me that 1/3 of your business or more is still out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you do have kind of these challenges just with scheduling and whatnot. I think at this point, always, marketing and just a shift that I know I've made professionally, and, what we focus on here is in what have you learned? What have you learned that adds value to the business? And that's, if you can, at the end of every year, put together, whether it's, you need to document it some kind of way, if it's blogs or if it's, some kind of notebook that you keep, whatever. What did you learn that adds value to the company? And summarizing that quarterly, yearly, annually, whatever, is an excellent way to make sure that your marketing has history and that you're adding value moving forward with historical background. And that's always useful.
And there's a thing I want to go back to for both of you. And something that you said, you were talking about gray hair, and it got Joelle doesn't have to worry about that, but we do, Carmen, we do. And that makes me think that for me, when gray hairs come up, it just means there's undue stress. And the undue stress really comes from the ruthlessness and maybe the unawareness, if you will, of what it actually takes to have a good feedback loop between marketing and sales. Would that be a good summary of what you were saying?
Yes, I think that's really important, and just and being realistic about what your year is like. I mean, I think the sales cycle, really being ramped up in the fourth quarter, that's not new. That's business everywhere. Whether like he used the example of cars, or whether you're healthcare insurance or whatever, your the calendar of your business. If you don't, you really, really should. But okay. The cycles. You can forecast to some degree the peaks and valleys of your sales. And so why then are we doing a flat line? We're going to make $1 million. Let's just divide by 4. It's 250,000 every quarter. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's doomed to not work. So if you know what where your peaks and valleys are, then you know what? Then it's like, maybe fourth quarter is more accurate to say we're going to do 350,000. And in the first quarter of the year, we know that's hard. That's when people are tight-fisted with their budgets. So we're going to scale back a little bit so that you get a much more realistic picture of what your sales looks like on a calendar spread. And then marketing can adjust and meet you where you need to be. But if you give a flat line, like I said, whatever your sales goal is divided by 4, that's what we're going to hit every quarter, or, even I don't know if it's even worse. Maybe Joelle would have to say, here's my sales goal divided by 12. That's what your quota is every month.
What you're talking about is there's just like no planning. This is just the way that it's going to be, which is doomed to failure regardless, when it's just divided out without any background or any conversation or any thought process or any reflection on past work, past sales, past communication cycles. Because I also have clients who do launches of products. Some do a 4-week launch, and one started out, and I would say some of them do and some of them don't. Some are faster and some are longer, but 1 month tends to be like a rollout launch for a lot of my clients. And I have a client who they made their launch longer, and then they tried to change it, and their customers were like, are you kidding me? So it also matters in a little bit of the planning at the beginning of the year, and what marketing is doing right now. What I hear you saying, Carmen, is if things are going to change and you're going to take a 2-month launch and make it a 1-month launch, or a 4-week launch and make it a 2-week launch, that's going to take more than just one time. It may take an entire year. It may take 2 years, depending on how ingrained customers are in this process and the way they're communicated to. So I think that also is, adds to that. Now, rigorous is a word that came to mind after this entire conversation. We're talking about finishing strong. We're talking about having the metrics. We're talking about communication. We're talking about leading by example. And that is not for the weak of heart. That is not for people who would sit back and just kind of hope and, hope that things continue to go well and only look at the things that are going well. We've got to be rigorous all the way through. So I'm curious, how would each of you define the word rigorous when it comes to being a leader in an organization?
Rigorous. Man, let me tell you something. Just the word, I always equate leadership with a rigorous job. It does. A lot of people that, they get promoted. I'll give you an example. When I first got out of the Marine Corps in 1992, I worked for a retail company. And I was an assistant manager. I did, I did work, but they saw that they were having problems with the managers that they had. Okay, so I got promoted. I'm the manager.
All right.
I was the manager. Can you believe that? Let me tell you something. That was the biggest mistake. I can't say it was a big mistake, but to say that it was a rigorous job, something I hadn't thought about, was an understatement. Because as an assistant manager, I worked 44 hours a week. When I became a manager, I never worked no less than 60 hours a week.
Right.
And if I look at it on a per hour basis, I made less money per hour. So when it comes to being a leader, it's not you sitting in a chair pointing and telling everybody what to do. If you understand what effective leadership is, you realize that you're going to have to get your hands dirty, and you're going to have to do it a lot every single day. Every single day, because you lead by example. You can't expect people to do things that you can't do or won't do. That's just how it is. But when people see you doing something, then they can do it, or they're willing to do it. But you have to do it first. And that's what an effective leader knows. And he understands that. So it's rigorous. I'm telling you.
I love it.
Being in a leadership position is not for the faint at heart. It's not.
Okay, Carmen, how would you define it?
I echo everything that Dewell said. He really did, as he said, hit it out of the park on that one. I would add to that and just say, to me, rigorous means also being as a leader, standing by what you said in the beginning of the year. If we said we're going to track this metric, then hold people accountable all the way through and don't change halfway. Don't waver on it. If we said this is how we're going to measure our progress, then measure it that way. And don't, it's common when people sit in a meeting and say, I love this idea, I love this concept. And then when the application comes, we want to change because it changes the way we're viewing things. And it takes leadership and bravery, really, to stand, even if it's a mistake, but to stand there and be willing to stand by that and say that that's what we did. And also to acknowledge a mistake if it, in fact, we discovered that this is not the right thing that we should be measuring or the way we should be going. But, I think definitely, rigorous means just holding people's feet to the fire, standing by the plan that we put together and actioned, and being willing to stand by it all the way. There's oftentimes the tendency to panic, as you get towards the end of the year, and maybe you're not quite where you are. So you're going to revert to old habits that may have worked 5 years ago or whenever, that you felt like did get you to your goals. And so you kind of jump ship and abandon what you've already said you were going to do. Mm-hmm. And that just destroys morale all the way across the organization when teams and leadership do that. So I would, to me, that's really what it means to me. And I'm an analytical marketing person. So, just being willing to stand by the plan that we put in place and the plan that we all agreed to, and just be willing to live with it and move all the way through.
Great. Those are some fabulous definitions that we can take away and check ourselves and add our own experiences and perspectives to that. That would be a great, define rigorous would be a great comment on the program notes page where this will be, and you'll find out more information about that here in just a little while. So what about 18 months from now? Would you say that your answer is really the same, to stay focused on metrics and to finish strong with a lot of motivation in 18 months from now? Or do you think your answers would change a little bit as you're sitting right here and looking toward a future self and a future place?
I'll go ahead and take that one. I think Carmen, again, hit the nail on the head, because if you have a plan in place, it's just like being on a ship, okay? And you have your courses set. There are going to be ups, there are going to be downs, there are going to be times where you have to make adjustments. But over the long haul, you have to know what direction you're going. And that direction doesn't change. If you're going to the Bahamas, I wish we were going to the Bahamas. The Bahamas haven't moved. They're still in the same place. So whether you have a breakdown on the ship or whatever happens, that's where you have to know where you're going. So whether it's, another year, 18 months, 24 months, if you know where your destination is, you're full steam ahead there. There's not going to be a lot of changes if you know exactly where you're going. And as you said, when you have that plan laid out, the plan is the plan. This is how we get here.
Mm-hmm. What you would hope to see in 18 months, if you're following a path that deals more in planning and metrics and analytics, is that you're getting better at being able to define what matters, being able to measure what matters, and incentivize correctly. In 18 months, you've got some feedback, you've got some results that you can look at, and so you can. There's a really great book that I love called The Lean Startup, and they talk about the 5 whys. And so now that you have some data and you can say, well, that didn't work well why? And then you ask why 5 more times until you get to the root cause of why didn't this work? And so I would hope that after 18 months that those conversations have happened. And so we're now moving forward, and then, you don't abandon the concept of staying analytical and metric driven and all of that, but you've just refined the process. You've said, you know what? Having meetings over lunch doesn't work, because then everybody comes back to the office and we're sleepy. And it didn't work well.
Oh, they
so
don't
then
come
we
back
say, okay.
Yeah, true. They might not come back.
Right. So maybe we're going to have this meeting over lunch or breakfast, excuse me. Or, there's, you figure it out. You figure out what works because you've got data and you've got history to tell you what's working. And so you refine. And so I would hope that after 18 months, and it's a continual cycle, you're going to keep getting better and you're going to keep growing, but you have to be willing to look, in the rear view every now and then and see where you've been and where you are and keep moving in the right direction.
What I noticed in this conversation, I'm just going to recap because this is the outline of the show right here as it developed with each and every one of you that is listening and watching us. And that is, we were talking about metrics. We even threw in a reference to Tina Turner. And we talked about finishing strong and having rigorousness. And we talked about quality over quantity. What we were talking about right now still matters in 18 months. And if we were starting with no history right now, what I took away was that the 18 months from now gives us an outcome for the course that was set. We can make course corrections along the way, yet we're defining what matters. We're building that shared consciousness. We're continuing to create the feedback loop between sales and marketing and product development, sales and marketing and product development and the rest of the company. All of that really matters. And so those were the highlights. And you can get those highlights everywhere to subscribe, to listen, and to watch the Voice of Bold Business Radio at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com/program6, which is titled The Most Important Business Investment Right Now. And we took a peek into the future. So I'm going to go back to how I started with people action, with people, comma, action, the business, the plan, right? Comma, and the think time that I said were the 3 most important, and I couldn't choose. If I were talking about right now, I would say think time. and I would always put that first in the moment, is to stop and look and listen and see what's going on, experience what's going on, feel what's going on, and be able to then ask a few questions to assess where things are. So think time in the dream time is very important to what I would add as a mix to the amazing conversation that we've had so far. Come check out the program notes, answer the question, how would you define rigorous? And we're also curious, Joelle, Carmen, and I, what is the most important thing that you could invest in your business right now?
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.